welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really zeroing in on something critical for short-term rental hosts. It's those legal vulnerabilities, the ones that are kind of lurking beneath the surface that could seriously jeopardize your business, maybe even your personal assets.
That's exactly right. Most hosts, when they start out, they're thinking about bookings, maybe nightly rates, design, but there's this whole layer of legal protection that's, well, often misunderstood. Or sometimes just completely missed. A lot of people just assume, that their regular homeowner's insurance has gotten them covered, or maybe the platform guarantees are enough. So our mission today is really to pull that apart and help you understand how to actually protect yourself.
Okay, yeah, let's unpack that, because when I first thought about hosting, I definitely assumed my homeowner's insurance was the safety net.
Yeah.
Seems logical, right?
It does seem logical. And honestly, it's a super common assumption. But the hard truth is, most standard homeowners policies, they have specific exclusions for short-term rental activities. Think about it from the insurer's view. They've priced your policy for, normal residential living, not the sort of revolving door of guests and the different risks that come with running an STR business.
Okay, so that's where these STR exclusions you hear about kick in.
Exactly, and they can leave you completely exposed if something goes wrong.
So what about something like the Airbnb host guarantee? I remember seeing that and thinking, okay, that's some protection.
Yeah, another really common point of confusion, the host guarantee. It does offer some limited protection, mainly against certain types of property damage caused by guests. But, and this is the key thing, it is absolutely not insurance. It's not a replacement for it. It has limits, conditions, and crucially, it generally doesn't cover liability if a guest gets injured. So yeah, it's more like a backstop for specific property damage scenarios, not the kind of broad shield many hosts think it is. If your guest slips and breaks an arm, the guarantee probably isn't going to help with that lawsuit.
Wow. Okay.
No.
So if the standard insurance often doesn't cover STRs and the platform guarantee is limited, what are the real protections hosts should be looking at? You can't just hope for the best.
Absolutely not. Hope is definitely not a strategy here. This is where things like liability waivers and, importantly, setting up the right legal structure for your business becomes so vital. Take a well-drafted liability waiver, for instance, the kind that, say, HostShield helps hosts put in place. When these are done correctly, signed by the guest, they can be a really significant line of defense. They make it clear what the risks are and that the guest accepts them.
Okay.
And then there's forming a separate legal entity, like an LLC. That creates a shield, essentially, between your business liabilities and your personal stuff, your house, your savings.
Liability waivers. That sounds important.
Yeah.
But, do they actually hold up in court? What makes one enforceable versus just a piece of paper?
That's a great question, and it's critical. For a waiver to work, legally speaking, especially for STRs, it needs to be really clear, unambiguous. And it has to be presented properly and, crucially, signed by the guest before they even start their stay, not after they arrive. It should spell out the potential risks tied to the property, maybe there are stairs, a pool, whatever, and confirm the guest agrees to take responsibility for those known risks. Services like HostShield really focus on making sure those waivers tick all the legal boxes, are easy to send out digitally, get signed, and then stored securely. That all helps make them much more enforceable if needed.
Okay, right. So standard insurance and platform guarantees aren't enough. We need these waivers, maybe an LLC. But let's be real. What's the actual chance a host gets sued? Is it something that really happens often?
It happens more often than people think, and the consequences can be, frankly, devastating. I mean, you're essentially opening up your private home to strangers, right? Accidents happen. People slip on wet tiles. They trip on a pathway outside, maybe hurt themselves using an amenity like a pool or a hot tub. The list goes on. And when someone gets hurt, seeking compensation is often the next step. And if you haven't set up those legal shields we talked about, your personal assets, house, car, savings, they could be directly at risk.
So this isn't just like small claims court stuff we're potentially looking at.
Oh, definitely not. Lawsuits involving injuries or significant property damage can easily run into 5 figures, sometimes 6 figures or even more.
Right.
And that's not just the potential payout, it's also the legal fees, which can be massive, even if you eventually win the case. So forming that LLC, that helps draw a line, limiting your personal exposure mostly to whatever assets are in the LLC. And having those solid liability waivers acts as kind of a first defense. It might deter a lawsuit in the first place, or at least make it much harder for them to win. It's all about being proactive to avoid financial ruin.
Okay, you mentioned something earlier, an ultimate STR protection checklist. Tell me more about that. It sounds comprehensive.
It is, yeah. We designed it to be a really practical step-by-step guide. It helps hosts make sure they've kind of covered all the angles for protecting their rental business. It definitely includes the crucial legal stuff like, have you formed an LLC? Do you have the right permits for your area? But it goes beyond just paperwork. It gets into the nitty-gritty of on-site safety. Things like, is your outdoor lighting adequate to prevent falls at night? Are your smoke and CO detectors working and placed correctly? Do you have clear safety rules posted for things like a pool or a hot tub if you have them?
So it's a blend of the legal back end and the practical on-the-ground safety measures.
Exactly. It's meant to be actionable, something you can actually use. It helps you spot potential weak points you might not have even thought about. And, for hosts who want a bit more hand-holding or have specific questions, we also offer Shield strategy sessions. Basically, a chance to talk one-on-one, go through the checklist, and figure out exactly where the gaps might be in their protection plan.
That makes sense. It prompts that question, doesn't it? Like, how well have you, the host listening, actually assessed all the different risks involved with your specific property?
Oh.
Okay, this is where I think it gets really powerful. Let's talk about some actual cases, real stories. What happened in that Austin, Texas case? The guest who slipped by the pool.
Right. This one it's a textbook example, unfortunately. So, guest slips near the pool area, fractures an ankle, not an uncommon type of accident. The guest then sued the host. And it wasn't a small claim. They sued for $85,000.
Wow. Okay, so the host calls their insurance company, right?
They did. Exactly what you'd expect. But the insurance claim was denied. Why? That STR exclusion we talked about earlier was right there in their standard homeowners policy.
Ouch.
And adding insult to injury, the Airbnb host guarantee didn't cover this situation either. Remember, it's not liability insurance.
Man, that must have been a shock. So what was the final damage financially for the host?
In the end, the host was personally on the hook for $110,000. That covered the settlement paid to the guest and all the legal fees involved in fighting the case.
$110,000.
Yeah.
Out of pocket.
Out of pocket. And what's really striking is thinking about how something like HostShield's automated waiver system might have changed things. If that guest had signed a clear, legally sound waiver acknowledging the risks of using the pool area before their stay, it could have dramatically weakened their case, potentially preventing such a huge payout.
Yeah, it's terrifying how one accident can spiral like that. I bet that host wishes they'd understood their insurance limitations before that happened. A very, very expensive lesson.
Absolutely. And sadly, that's often how hosts learn the hard way after something bad occurs. Okay, let's shift gears to another scenario. This one's from San Diego. A host rents out their place thinking it's for, a regular family stay. Turns out it became a massive unauthorized party.
Oh no, I could just picture the mess and the noise complaints.
But it was way worse than just a mess. The damage to the property itself, over $60,000.
$60,000? Seriously?
Seriously. Now, the Airbnb host guarantee did kick in for some of it, but only covered about $10,000 of that total.
Okay.
And then, the neighbor complaints led to city inspections. The host ended up getting hit with a $5,000 fine for violating local ordinances or whatever it was.
So let me get this straight. $60,000 in damages, only 10 covered, plus a $5,000 fine. The host is left holding the bag for $55,000.
Pretty much, yeah. They had to use personal savings, maybe even sell off other assets just to cover that remaining $50,000 loss.
That's brutal.
Now, again, let's play the what if. What if that host had set up their rental business inside an LLC, maybe using a service like HostShield to help? And what if they had a really clear rental agreement or waiver that the guests signed, outlining the rules about parties, guest limits, and their liability for damages? That could have given the host a much stronger legal footing to go after the guest directly for the damages instead of absorbing that huge loss personally.
Yeah, these stories, they really drive home the risk, don't they? It makes you think one bad booking, if you're not set up right, could literally wipe out years of profit, or worse. I could see how something like that would make someone just quit hosting altogether.
Exactly. It really highlights why you need to treat this like a real business, not just, a casual side gig. It needs proper business structures and risk management.
Okay, one more case study. The mountain cabin incident. Guest slips near a hot tub, injures their back. What happened there?
Right. Another common amenity, another potential hazard. Hot tubs are great draws for guests, but they come with risks. So this guest slipped near the tub, claimed a back injury, and filed a lawsuit, this time seeking $150,000.
$150,000. Jeez. Okay, let me guess insurance problems again.
You guessed it. Homeowners insurance denied the claim. The reason this time. The policy didn't have a specific rental rider or endorsement added to it. Many insurers require this extra bit of coverage specifically for short-term rental activity.
So no insurance coverage meant the host's personal finances were on the line again, completely exposed.
Totally exposed. In the end, the host settled the case for $90,000 to avoid potentially losing even more in court. But then they also had to pay around $15,000 in legal fees on top of that.
So over $100,000 again.
Yep. Now, think about HostShield's waivers in this context. You can customize those waivers to specifically mention the risks of using amenities like a hot tub. You outline the guest responsibilities like don't run near the tub, be careful on wet surfaces, common sense stuff, but spelled out. Getting a guest to digitally sign a waiver acknowledging those specific risks before they use the hot tub, that could have massively shifted the liability, potentially stopping the lawsuit cold or resolving it much, much cheaper.
It's really sobering having to suddenly find, $105,000.
Mm-hmm.
Most people just don't have that sitting around. It could mean remortgaging your house or wiping out your retirement savings. So, okay, we've heard the horror stories. What do you say to the host listening right now who's maybe thinking, yeah, but all this legal stuff, LLCs, waiver services, it just sounds like another expense I don't really need.
Yeah, I get that hesitation, but I'd really urge them to try and shift their thinking. It's not just an expense, it's an investment. An investment in protecting your assets, your business, maybe your whole financial well-being. Ask yourself, what's the potential cost of not having this protection? Compare, say, a pretty modest monthly fee for a service like HostShield, which might give you waiver tools and LLC guidance. Compare that to the potential cost of one lawsuit. We're talking tens, maybe hundreds of thousands in legal fees and settlements.
That really puts it into perspective, doesn't it? It's like penny wise, pound foolish, potentially.
Exactly. It's about being proactive. It's like having an umbrella before it starts raining, not scrambling for one when you're already soaked.
Right.
And these services, like HostShield, they're designed to make it easier. They automate sending out the waivers, track signatures, store everything securely in the cloud. They give you access to legal resources. It's about making proper protection achievable for the average host.
Okay, so wrapping this up, for everyone listening, if these real stories, these potential risks have kind of hit home and you're thinking, maybe I'm not as protected as I thought, what's the next step? What should they actually do?
Well, the first thing is just to get clear on your own situation. Knowledge is power, right? You can go to shieldmyrental.com and book a free Shield strategy call. It's genuinely no pressure, just a chat to understand what protections you have now and where the potential gaps might be. Or, even easier, just DM the word protect to @shieldmyrental on social media. That'll get the ball rolling too. Understanding your specific risks is really the essential first step before you can fix them.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, the goal here isn't to scare anyone out of hosting. Not at all. It's really about empowering you, giving you the tools and knowledge to host with more confidence. Knowing you've taken sensible, proactive steps to protect yourself, your family, your assets, that brings real peace of mind, because ultimately, if you're trusting people with your property, maybe one of your biggest assets, doesn't it just make sense to take responsibility for protecting yourself too? That's something to think about.